On this episode of the Hidden Money Podcast, today we have Kristin Burton with us. Kristin, now she's the owner of what's called Strive Coaching, and the really cool point is in her bio, she has paid off $200,000 in debt and accumulated over $1 million of assets in only 6 years. We are just extremely excited to have her on. Welcome, Kristin.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. I'm really looking forward to talking with you this morning.
Yeah. And if you wouldn't mind, just tell us about Strive Coaching. Now, you dabble in a lot of areas. You are working, but let's just try to focus on Strive Coaching here a little bit and tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So really the whole purpose of the business is to bring financial literacy and promote financial independence to medical professionals. The whole thing was born out of my own struggles, essentially. I finished graduate school and like most people assumed that having a six-figure income would make me wealthy, and very rapidly figured out once I got it that wasn't exactly the case. Between the student loan debt and taxes, I wasn't as pleased as I anticipated with what our finances actually looked like. I had $161,000 in student loan debt, which honestly is pretty common in my space to come out with multiple six figures of student loan debt. And I had no idea how to manage it, which also is very common in my space. So I ended up basically, without knowing anything, just taking the strategy of work solves most problems. And that's what I did. I worked and worked and worked. I worked 80 to 90-hour weeks. My husband and I lived off of about $40,000 a year, and I paid off $161,000 of student loan debt in 16 months. And
Wow.
I thought I would be really excited, which it is. It's a big number. It's great. And at the end of it all, I realized pretty quickly after achieving that goal that what I actually wanted was time freedom and the ability to control my work schedule, reduce hours, maybe even retire early. And all of those things actually required assets, not just being debt free. And so I eventually transitioned to, okay, how do you actually build wealth in medicine? And along the way, I realized there's a lot of other medical professionals exactly like me with the same exact goals and no idea how to achieve them. And so that was really the beginning of this whole business.
Yeah, in the medical industry, kind of like the public accounting industry, you have to put in your dues, trade your time. That's what you trade. You trade your time to get experience, to get your money. And so you realize that really quick. So how many hours a week are you a practicing PA? Are you 40 hours? Have you toned that down?
So I actually am still a 1.0 FTE as of this minute. And so I work nights and I work an atypical schedule, but I do practice technically full time. Starting in January 2024, I actually just reduced to a 0.6-ish FTE. And so I'll have more time to dedicate to this and still be able to do medicine with hopefully fewer weekends and holidays involved.
That's awesome. Yeah, you're really gaining because financial freedom is great. But if you don't have freedom in your life and in your schedule, what's the point? That is a good outlook. So on Strive, tell us a little bit about that day to day of what you do there and how you are helping these people in the same situation that you are. And this doesn't just apply to the medical industry. Anyone listening who may be in this kind of rat race and you're on the wheel and you're just spending time and you feel like you're just not gaining ground. Is that something you help people with?
Yeah, we have a variety of ways that we do that. Things ranging from like an ebook all the way up to someone who says, hey, I need someone keeping me accountable and checking my budget every month that's in our full coaching program, and all sorts of things in between. What I most often find is people come in and into our realm and say, I really would like to be able to go part-time when I have kids, or gosh, I just can't see myself putting in another 30 years in medicine. I'd like to be able to call it quits at 55, or all sorts of different kind of variants, but the means of getting there are pretty similar. Like you need to learn how to invest, whether that's in the stock bond market or in real estate or another asset class. You have to be building assets that can replace the income. And most people, just out of sheer lack of knowledge, don't know how. And so they'll enter saying, look, 24% of my 401k, and that's it. Well, I get to break the news of, okay, well, then you'll retire never, let alone early. But then we actually start diving into what does this actually look like? And everything we do is education based. So we're genuinely just teaching people how does this stuff work and how can you then go and apply it to your own life and change what you're doing so that you get a different outcome.
That's great. Yeah, I think Social Security was a wonderful thing that we brought out right after the Depression or during the Depression, and it offered security to people who had nothing then, but it's also messed up our society a little bit in the way that people plan. Everyone thinks, or a lot of people come out of school thinking, even if I don't invest well or if I don't have a great 401k, I can rely on Social Security. And when you see people relying on Social Security today, it's not enough. It's not even close. We need to help people understand that it's our own individual responsibility to take care of ourselves. We can't expect someone else to take care of us. And financial planning is huge, but most people don't think about it until it's way too late, especially when you consider time value of money. If you're 30 years old doing financial planning for yourself, you've got a ton and a tremendous amount of opportunity to set your retirement up in a reasonable way that you'll find rewarding. But if you wait until you're in your 50s or, for God forbid, in your 60s, it's really tough. So I think it's awesome that you're out helping physicians and other professionals start thinking about it while there's still time to build the future they want. And then they're the ones in control, right?
Yeah, it is, like you said, tremendously more valuable to start early. And unfortunately, it's not cool or fun to talk about this when you're 28, hanging out with your friends. But if you start when you're 28, it becomes pretty cool and fun pretty quickly. It's just a matter of getting the knowledge and having an interest. Because for a lot of people, these topics sound kind of boring and things that they would rather not worry about or not think about.
Yeah. Let me ask you a personal question. Do you love doing what you do as it in the physician world as the PA? Do you enjoy that?
So I actually do genuinely like medicine and I do genuinely like my job. But COVID changed things quite a bit.
Hmm.
As you can imagine, I worked in an ICU through every single wave of the pandemic. I think I might have missed like 1 month of one wave due to maternity leave. But outside of
Wow.
that, we were in it every single day. That changed things a lot for me in terms of longevity. But also, even I will say relatively early into this profession, as much as I enjoy the day to day, I thought, I don't know if I'm in it till 65.
Mhm.
It's stressful and high demand, and that's a lot of years to put into that. And so I think really, even from the beginning, I knew I enjoy this, but it's for a season for me, and I'm not going to be able to do 35, 40 years of this.
Yeah.
Did you know that going to med school?
Oh, no, you don't know anything. You're 19 years old and they're like, "Get a good job." And you're like, "Okay, where do I sign up for loans in grad school? Here we go." Yeah, no.
Yeah. 200K of debt just to get, yeah, I don't know if I want to do this my whole career. Yeah, that's hard.
Yeah, I think a lot of us professionals, we learn that we might have gone into this career because we have a passion for it. I certainly did. But when you are required to work just to put food on the table, to keep the mortgage paid off, it makes it a little different. It gives you a different relationship with your career when you're being forced to do it and you have no choice but to do it,
Yeah,
versus if you can build financial freedom and you can work when you want to work and you have some flexibility, some freedom to do different things and focus
yeah,
on other parts of your life while working, it can make your job and your career completely different, a whole different
right.
animal. It can be something you actually love to do and are looking forward to do it because you only have to do it for 24 hours this week instead of 80.
Yes, and in medicine in particular, there's so many options in terms of redesigning your career within medicine, but some of the options pay less. And so if you are sitting there like a slave to needing every single dollar of the maximum paycheck, you don't have the option necessarily to take the lesser paying job or do the telehealth because you wanted to work from home and those kind of things. So exactly as you said, it doesn't have to be all or nothing, like, I'm totally financially independent or I'm 1,000% living paycheck to paycheck. You can find a happy medium, really along the way and just be able to take some ownership and some control over your life and your setup that does a lot for your day-to-day happiness without even saying, "I'm totally financially free, I never need to get paid again."
I love that. So, how long does it take? Let's say someone calls you up, they're in their early 30s. They are not financial free at all. They need that maximum paycheck every day, but they're willing to plan and work with you. How long until they start having choices and opportunities to start creating that path that they want in their career.
Yeah, I think it depends on the modality by which you want to build your wealth. You can do it faster with real estate, of course, because it's a leverage asset. And so you don't need as much in order to build the level of cash flow that replaces your income. But again, it's a leveraged asset. So there's additional risk that comes with that. If you were doing like traditional stock bond investing, it is a little bit more straightforward in terms of timeline. Offhand, like one of the rules of thumb you can use is if you're going to have a 50% savings rate, AKA investing 50% gross, you would be financially independent in about 15 years. The thing of it is most people aren't willing to do the 50, but if you are, then you could, in a very short time horizon, go from 100% needing the paycheck to 100% not needing a paycheck ever, just based on a stock bond portfolio. Again, if you're willing to incorporate other asset classes, the timing changes, but it takes some time. There's no get rich quick scheme. You're not going to invest twice, buy a couple shares of an S&P 500 index fund and never work again. It doesn't really work
Yeah.
that like that. But I do think people underestimate in general the percent of gross income that has to be allocated towards investments to actually make a move and actually tip the needle. And for that reason, no matter really the goal, I tell every medical professional, you do need to be putting 20% of gross towards asset. Whether you want to retire sooner than that, great, it should be more. But all the time, you should just flex that muscle of at least allocating that percentage of your income towards building assets so that maybe down the line you can back off a little bit. But for most of us, that's going to end up being the thing that at least creates a secure financial retirement. And the sooner that you want all that, the more you have to do.
So let's say started and I'm putting 50% of my income into real estate. And in 15 years, I'll have mostly financial freedom. But I don't have to wait 15 years, right? It starts tapering. You can start tapering off in 8 years and 5, right?
That's the thing is that, yes, you can create your own path. Like maybe partway down the line, because you have built so many assets, let's say your portfolio's hit a point where you can coast, never invest again, and be able to retire comfortably at a traditional age. Well, maybe rather than continuing that investing pace, you just take a job that pays 50% of the last salary because it's less hours and you like it more. You way back off what you're investing and you still have that secure retirement. So there's definitely not a one size fits all path. It just depends on what time frame you want things to look like. But the sooner that you actually start doing the process of building assets, the more options you have more quickly, I guess.
So the commonality I'm hearing here is it takes action on your part. It takes strategy on your part. You can't just put your head in the sand, work your tail off and hope it all pays off. But if you can take control, you can start making choices very much sooner. You can start having more financial freedom. There's the hidden money or hidden freedom in just being strategic.
Yes, absolutely. And the thing is, working really hard isn't a great long-term strategy. No one wants to have to put in that level of hours for 10, 20 years. And so if you decide to do that for a short term, but then you're really smart about how you allocate that income, you can position yourself to then have choices and work much less in a short period of time rather than working really hard, putting your head down, but then spending all the money on random lifestyle stuff and kind of looking up and just having nothing to show for it.
That's that intentionality. You don't just stumble into wealth like you were talking about. You have to also bring people around you to coach you. And so what Mike was saying earlier is don't rely on somebody else to get you there. Well, you're not going to fully rely on the government to give you Social Security. That would be foolish. But we want to bring in people like Kristin or other advisors around us, tax people, attorneys. There's people that are going to get us on the right road and going forward. That is not fully relying. You're taking the initiative with your own life, but there's things you just don't know. You may not know taxes. You may not know estate planning or generational wealth building and all this kind of things that we need to talk about. You're going to need to bring in those experts, and that's perfectly normal and actually very wise. And we just don't want to just outwork, like Kristin's saying, you don't want to just keep outworking bad habits either. That will burn you out. If your lifestyle creeps with your income, at some point you're going to have to stop. You have to say no. I'm going to live below my means. And as I make more income, that's just going to generate more disposable income to which I can invest. And if we invest into real estate and we could reduce our taxes while growing wealth, now you're starting to see the momentum kick up and now you're pushing this thing up the field. And so lifestyle creep is always big. I see that in a lot of people who they have a very big year, especially in the sales side or consulting side where they have a jump in income. First thing they're going to do is, I've always wanted this. I've always wanted this car and all this kind of stuff. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with upgrading your lifestyle, but don't let it keep driving your budget. At some point, you're going to have to make a stop.
Yes, for sure. Actually, I really genuinely live that out. Our income is continue to increase every year, which we've worked very hard to do. And example, I literally drive a car worth about $12,000 or $13,000. And this past year, I was like, I think I might replace the car. And then or we could buy another short-term rental, save a bunch of money on taxes, have another cash flowing property. And so, yeah, let's do that. And I'll keep driving the $12,000 car. And what I did, it gets me from A to B. And that's a better long-term move, and a move that lets me work less hours and has a whole bunch of compounding benefits. And so making those strategic decisions and keeping the lifestyle in check enough that you actually can build this stuff is really the key to getting it done.
Yeah. And being mindful of debt too. Having a $12,000 paid off car is a lot better than a nice new car where you have 80 grand of debt. There could be tax deductions on that, but it's not going to outweigh the debt that you're taking on. And there's always good debt and bad debt. You'll hear Mike and I talk about how debt can be utilized and leveraged in a position where it actually accelerates your wealth building, i.e. real estate. You're not going to go buy a $500,000 rental property, more than likely with cash, but that's going to start developing a portfolio for you. So there is good debt out there. The bad debt out there is going to be what Kristin said. Hey, I'm going to go buy a car. Consumer debt will be a weight around your neck. And that is when you start seeing a creep of consumer debt. You want to check your lifestyle and see if you're living above your means. And that's always very important when trying to budget. And budgeting is not fun. It's not a good topic. It isn't. It's hard to get excited about it. I get it. It really is. But there's people like Kristin who are going to help you. So how in the details do you get with someone's budget? If someone comes in and they land a really nice job out of med school and they're going to be making $250,000, $300,000. Their eyes get really big. And now they're like, okay, what do I do? Where do you even start that conversation with someone?
Yeah, I'm one of those people that thinks that you really do have to intentionally spend money throughout your whole process on the things that bring you joy. You can't have everything all at once, but you should be able to have some things. Otherwise, you're going to hate the process and you're not going to last very long. So I tend to not nickel and dime people on the small stuff like, oh my gosh, you shopped online again, or you went to Starbucks again. Honestly, you can really create a lot of shame around basic spending. Like some people just like a latte. It's not a big deal. But I really try to focus on like the key overhead expenses that actually do take up 10, 20, 30% of your monthly take home pay, because those are the things that really do move the needle on whether or not you can get ahead. And so things like, what are your housing expenses? What are your transportation expenses? And then under miscellaneous spending, the way that we format things, there's a representation of percent take home pay for every category. And so I'm really looking at what are the things outside of those key large overhead expenses that are actually taking at least 10% of your take home pay monthly, because those are the big opportunities for you to actually make a shift. And most of the time, it has nothing to do with you took your grandma out to eat or you went to Starbucks. It's usually a big habit. Maybe someone has, example, like an emotional spending coping mechanism. And so they'll be shopping a lot. Like I had one person spending 27% of her monthly take home pay shopping. And that has nothing to do with the desire for clothes and everything to do with probably some type of coping habit for stress or anxiety or something else. And so if you just look at the big stuff, where's the bulk of things going? It actually isn't that hard to make a big shift without having to cut out all the fun stuff. I'm a big travel person. I've always traveled throughout this whole process. And so I have my category that kind of gets left untouched. Most people do too. And I think that's okay. You got to spend and you got to have fun along the way.
Agreed. You can't just eat ramen every day,
Yeah,
not
right?
go take your spouse on vacation. It'll wreck your life more so than just budgeting for a nice vacation every now and then. Completely
It's
agree
true.
with
It
that.
seems like you're just shifting the thought process to being intentional versus just doing as things happen. As the day goes on, yeah, I want that or I
Yep.
need that, but actually planning, being intentional and deliberate. That's so hard to do for some of us. It's easy for
Yeah.
people like Kevin, but for me, that's hard. Today's the day I'm living. Don't want to
Yeah.
think about what
Right.
I'm doing 3 days from now.
Yeah. So a simple exercise I sometimes do with people is, let's say your W-2 is 300,000. Ignore taxes. That's why it's going to be a very simple exercise. Instead of getting paid every other week or every 2 weeks, what if on January 1st you got $300,000 handed to you for that year's work? So you have to use that $300,000 wisely from January all the way to December, because if not, you may not be eating in December. So think of it as being intentional with your dollars, that intentional with it, and giving a dollar a job everywhere you go. And if you just put that mindset on there, because people always just try to say, oh, I'm going to get paid, waiting for that paycheck, waiting for that paycheck. You shouldn't be living that way, whether you're making $300,000 or $30,000. Now, yeah, the latte thing, totally agree. Some people just want to eat out. That's perfectly
Yeah.
fine. But if you're making $30,000, your percentage of income going to coffee is going to be a lot higher than someone making
Yeah.
$300,000. That
It's
percentage
true.
is a lot different. So every
Yep.
situation's different. And so you need to look at your own financial situation, because a $5 a day latte for someone may be nothing to where it might be a big financial shift for somebody else. So
Yep.
just be aware of those things and take hold of your money, be a good steward of it. And taxes are a big part of that. That's where Mike and I's passions are. That is a big component, because if your W-2 is $300,000, instead of getting handed $300,000 on January 1st, you're likely getting handed $220,000 or $230,000. So just eliminate some off the top already going to Uncle Sam. Then when we get to December and we could tax plan, maybe we can get some of that back that you paid in January in this exercise. That's always what tax planning is. And so, Kristen, you've mentioned short-term real estate being one of your major tax plans. Do you go down that road with some of your clients of tax planning and your success story of, hey, I utilize real estate and it offsets my taxes? Do you get into that with your clients?
I do bring that up a lot because for people who do still want to stay, full-time practicing medicine as a high W-2 earner, there's not that many, I shouldn't say that. You guys are the tax strategists. In my experience, there's not that many things that massively move the needle in terms of your tax burden, but
You're
the
right.
short-term rental tax loophole is one. And if you
Mhm.
wanted to invest in real estate anyways, then you might learn about that, think about that, and go, hey, look, this can save me a ton of money. So we've done it twice. Now, our long-term plan is for my husband to pursue a real estate professional status. And so that would be a whole different approach from a tax standpoint. But right now, we both have W-2 jobs. And as of this moment, we're both 1.0 FTEs. So the short-term rental tax loophole is kind of the main thing available to us. And we had an appetite for real estate anyways. So we decided to take advantage of it. And I will say that's of all of the real estate investing things, that is one of the kind of things that piques interest more for medical professionals than anything else because they hear high cash flow and potential tax savings for a high income earner. And that tends to get people pretty excited.
It is pretty exciting. Like you said, there's not a lot for W-2 employees. Plain and simple, there are not nearly as many tax planning opportunities as there are for someone who owns their own business or a contract. But there's still some. But the ability to go buy a rental property and have the deductions or the depreciation from that rental property actually decrease your W-2 income on your tax return. Everyone can't do it, but if you do it right, you can do it. That is amazing. I mean, we saw back in the times of 100% bonus depreciation only 2 years ago, but I remember one physician who bought a property in Destin, this is probably about 3.5 years ago. $1.1 million they spent on it. They were receiving a $1 million a year W-2. So they were paying a lot of tax. And
Right.
they, instead of going on a trip, a $200,000 trip this guy would go on, instead of going on one of those this year, they said, let's go buy this $1.1 million beach property in Destin or right near Destin on the I-30 corridor. And they bought it, put 10% down, $110,000 came out of their cash, out of their pocket, put 10% down, and they got a 400 plus $1,000 tax deduction.
Right.
Ultimately, that down payment was completely covered by their tax savings, and they got $11,000 bonus on top of it. So just by taking those actions, and it's not only SDRs, but by taking that deliberate approach of saying, hey, what am I going to do with my money this year? They put it into a good ROI asset. That's a great investment on its own, but they had the IRS actually pay for it. Nothing came out of their pocket when it was all said and done. And now it's growing, and they're making something like about 2 years ago, they were making over 160,000 in income from that property. That's amazing.
Yeah, that is incredible. Do think though, stuff like that, if you don't have the right people in your circle to know that these things exist, these things are options, and other people maybe are doing that too, you could spend 20, 30 years just like practicing medicine and have no idea that that's on the table. And so, exactly like you've been saying, having the community or having the professionals around you to go, hey, here's an opportunity. Otherwise, I think really this kind of opportunity isn't by any means common knowledge amongst the medical community. And so you got to have those people in play so that you can go, oh, look, this is what's possible for me. Hundreds of thousands of dollars in tax savings from one single real estate investment.
So for a physician that doesn't know anything about that, I see you have this free ebook. Is it The Secrets to Your Rich Life Post-Graduation? Is
That
that
is actually specifically for students. I get asked all the time, hey, what should I be doing while I'm still in school? Which is hard because you don't have an income yet. So I did put that together, though, specifically for students to build up key habits.
sounds like it should be required reading for every graduate in some kind of
Yeah.
professional education. Can you give us a quick 2-minute synopsis of that book for students?
Yeah, I walk through how to figure out like what your debt to income ratio will be post graduation and then try your best to then create a debt to income ratio less than 1 post graduation, meaning that your total student loan debt would be less than your first year annual income. And then walk through how to implement budgeting strategies using your student loans as your source of income so that you can ensure that you don't run out of money until
Mm.
the student loans disperse again, but then B, also so that you have that habit in place and can minimize the student loan debt overall. We talk about credit cards in there as well. That is one of the things that it has really, I think, derailed my kind of world of people is that a lot of folks come out with high debt to income ratios as is, but then we have all these gaps before we can get employed with licensing and credentialing. And so people will stack like $30,000 of high interest credit card debt on top of it. So I just walk through how to plan appropriately for all of those things and allocate enough cash towards the necessary licensing and credentialing so that you're not in that position when you do finally get the job that you have 30K of debt at 23% staring you in the face, plus your massive student loan burden.
Yeah, it's funny how credit cards do that, how debt does that. When you don't need the money, people, banks will throw credit card offers to you left and right, unsecured loan offers when you don't need the money. But when you need it, it's hard to find those. And then they are high interest. But then as
Yeah,
soon as you graduate, they start throwing these at you because the banks know you can pay. They want you to
yeah,
get in debt. They want you to use their money because you're a good investment for them. They're not a
yeah,
good investment for you, though.
I know. Honestly, credit cards are terrifying. I use them for almost every single financial transaction that I make, but I obviously never carry a balance and meet people all the time that have $70,000 in credit card debt, all of which is above 20. And it's just heartbreaking, honestly, because it's just really will destroy their financial life for multiple years trying to navigate that situation. So it's like such a double-edged sword. And there's a lot of people are starting that process of accruing credit card debt really young. Their frontal lobe's not even developed yet, fully
Mm.
developed, and someone's handing you a credit card in college saying, hey, be good with this. It is sad what can result.
Yeah, this isn't a charity, guys.
Right.
They are investing in you to take your money. And so
Mhm.
I'm in the same way. I carry credit cards, don't carry the balance on them. There is actually more protection with the credit cards. That's why we use
Mhm.
them, but they get you in trouble.
Right.
So I think just be smart with them. But I'm curious on the medical side. Because I always tend to think of athletes too, because in these higher earner fields, they don't have the financial education. Because I see a lot of doctors who are making a lot of money and they just don't have a lot of money. You know what I mean? And so athletes can be in the same boat. Is there, when y'all are going through college and med school, is there any financial class requirement at all? Like any finance 101, accounting 101, anything?
Essentially, no. I have talked to a few people that had something built into their program. It's pretty rare. Actually, that is one thing I do within this business is I'll actually go and speak to graduating classes. It'll even just be a virtual presentation with just resource of how to get started. But in general, no. It's kind of like, hey, here's all this debt and here's this big income. Go out and
Figure it
figure it
out.
out.
Good
Which is
luck.
and in medicine too, there's this general, thing that we do where we equate lifestyle with job title. And so what you see is someone finishes, training and says, "Well, okay, I am this type of person." We'll make something up. I'm an orthopedic surgeon, and therefore I have to drive this type of car. I have to live in this neighborhood because the other orthopedic surgeons do, but we negate the fact that maybe the other one has had that income for 10 years and you've had 2 paychecks. And so we all skip any kind of lifestyle ramp and you go up to, I'm going to match everyone else, which creates a lot of problems in the first few years financially of practice. It's an odd thing. It probably happens in other worlds too, but I know it happens in mine where people just skip the line and go, yep, I live in the mansion and I drive a Porsche because I have the job title that I've had
I
for a
made
week.
it. Yeah. And if you've been in that situation, don't feel bad. I think it's all education. We learn from our financial mistakes. And just because Mike and I are CPAs, people look to us like we've never made tax mistakes or we've never
Right.
made financial mistakes. So far from the truth. The reason that we know what we know is because we've probably stepped into a lot of traps
Yep.
along the way. So do not feel guilty. Do not feel bad if you've found yourself in this situation or if you do have consumer credit card debt. This isn't a shaming thing. It's just
Mm-mm.
education. It's just
Yep.
pointing out some analytical facts of here's how to become independently financially free.
Yeah.
And as long as you can know today, it's better than knowing tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then you can make changes today and you can
Right.
adjust. That's the
All
good
those
thing of
things we
how
just
we
said
are.
can be undone. Yeah.
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 You're not stuck. You're not trapped. And
Yeah.
part of it's just education, accountability, which Kristin and her team can provide, that accountability on a budget that someone would need. So it's a very needed skill set.
I'd even go further and say mistakes are some of the best education you get. Yeah, you pay for
yeah.
them, but you pay for your college degree as well.
Yep.
Real practical mistakes that you learn from can learn a lot and they're valuable. And they have a return on your investment. You can get a positive ROI. If you look at mistakes as an opportunity to get better versus as something to pretend never happened, you can get an ROI versus just losing whatever you lost on that mistake.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Very wise, Mike.
After all my mistakes, I have to look at them as a possibility and opportunity.
way.
Otherwise, it'd just be depressing. So strivewithkristin.com. I've just been checking out this website as we're talking. Man, you offer so much free, good stuff on here. There's great stories, great white papers, free ebooks, lots of videos. I couldn't recommend strongly enough to check out strivewithkristin.com. This is a great site. Well, Kristin, thank you for sharing all this with us today. It's been a really good learning experience for me. I appreciate it, and I hope we can have you on again. Any final thoughts you'd like to leave us with, Kristin?
I don't think so. I really appreciate your time overall, and I hope your listeners got some value out of this. I am laughing to myself a little bit. I'll have to call my mom later. My mom's a CPA, actually, and I spent my whole life listening to tax pearls at the dinner table, and I thought it was so boring, and I would never have any interest in it. And now here I am talking to a couple of CPAs for fun. So I'll have to let her know. But I really appreciate what you guys do and your time. And obviously, the world of tax strategy is a world that many high-income earners of all types are not familiar with, and a service that we all need. So I very much appreciate your expertise.
Well, we appreciate you. And you don't work just with medical professionals. Really, any professional who's receiving income that they're paying tax on, who's anyone who needs and wants to build and focus on financial freedom, you can help them, right?
Yes, we do really focus on the wealth building aspect of money. And so, for that reason, we typically serve people with at least a six-figure income. And because we do serve so many medical professionals, we're really used to people with a lot of debt. And so, if that's you, high debt to income ratio, particularly if you have a six-figure income or above, I definitely think we would be able to help.
There you have it. Again, that's strivewithkristen.com. Please check it out. And thank you for being here on the Hidden Money Podcast, Kristin. We're grateful for you.
Thank you guys. I appreciate it.